had a bit of a crazy night last night. I went to pick up this older Craftsman. It was on Craigslist. The guy said he would give it to someone for free if they took away a truckload of wheels and tires. I ended up with a 7x14 trailer full of wheels and tires. So I gotta go make a dump run real quick. And then I was leaving room in my bed to leave room for a 28-inch snowblower. That was $120. I got there and they were like, hey, you want to buy a mower for $200? So I got this almost brand new Troy built for $200. I still had the frame from the mower in my last video in here. So I managed to make it all fit and drove back home with all this. So I'm going to get this unloaded and then we'll start on one of these. Okay, I made a mistake. I made a big mistake. Turns out you have to pay to dump tires. $140 a ton. I have about 50 tires on here, all with wheels. So the belt here, it has a few cracks in the back of it. I can't really fit my phone back there to show you, but it does have a few cracks. I would probably want to replace that. The drive belt, it doesn't look too bad, so we could probably leave that on there. I do want to take the deck off because this is just so much stuff on there, and wash all of this oil off. I do have reason to believe we're going to need to do a crankcase gasket on it. If it was just on the other side, I would think it would just be the oil drain, but it is around the whole bottom of the block, so I think that gasket is gone and we just need to reseal it. But speaking of things that are gone, I did not realize this is missing the starter solenoid. It's missing the ignition switch, and it's missing the starter. So luckily I was able to find one on a parts mower that I have. Also took the solenoid off of it. Hopefully we can make that work. While I'm doing other stuff on here, I'm going to take off the carburetor, throw it in the ultrasonic cleaner. That way it'll clean up real nice. There was no gas in it when I got it, so I'm hoping that the whole thing's been drained out and it's not that bad. So let's go ahead and pull it off. Now it is super windy today, so I do apologize for the background noise. The good part about this, the engine is not locked up. It does have compression. That's what's left of that gasket. Definitely some junk in there. I think it'll clean up though. I'm gonna get that main jet out. So I'm gonna attempt to get the solenoid to work. It looks like it was a single post on here, and this is a double post because there's only one with a connector on it, and then the ground wire has the ring terminal on it. So we're gonna have to modify it a little bit to fit. And it was also missing the cable from the solenoid to the starter. Luckily I had that as well. So let's try to get it on. Just zip this one in. This is a T40 bit. into that solenoid. Right there. It's a little long, but you just stuff it up in there. Before I can test this any further, I really have to go get a key switch for it. Alright, once again, my parts mower has saved the day. I have the exact switch. So I'm going to get that installed if I can one-handed. Alright, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to cut this ring connector off and then ground it to this post. I'm going to go ahead and test that theory out just by holding the terminal to the post and then trying to start it, see what happens. Okay, so that is what I'm going to have to do, because you can see right here, nothing happening. If I hook it around that terminal, it'll stay by itself. You see we suddenly have starter engagement, so I'm going to have to cut that off and put a different connector on it. This ring gear is not meshing properly with the starter gear for some reason. I'm going to have to take another look at that. Maybe try a different starter. Alright, so luckily I did have another starter. It looks like this one, the teeth are a little closer on it compared to this one. And I think that's what the issue was. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this battery back up. And hopefully get it to turn properly. Oh, well. Gotta hook up the starter cable. Try that again. We are in business, folks. Alright, another windy day here. I'm going to go ahead and get this engine off of here, and then we can start cleaning everything up. Alright, I got the crank bolt loosened. The pulley is free, so I should just be able to lift it off of there without having to pull it down. Now I'm just going to get these mounting bolts off. Got two on each side. Alright, I didn't film the whole thing just because these old brigs are so easy to take off. Just got the starter wire, the one connection, two connections. The exhaust will just lift up out of that space. And then the throttle cable, I already had the carburetor off. You don't have to take it off, I just already had it off. And now we are good to lift this thing up out of here. I am going to drain the oil first though. Alright, so full disclosure before you continue on the video. If you keep watching towards the end, you'll see I get to a point where I realize there's no hope for it. It's too old. I made the mistake of thinking that I was getting it for free, but I had to pay to dump all the tires, so technically I paid $140 for it. But do continue watching to see what's wrong with it. I was going to scrap the whole video, but I decided to go ahead and put it out anyways. That way you can see it's not always a win-win. Anyways, I hope you continue watching and enjoy today's video. I'm going to go get some degreaser and spray it all over this and the engine and wash the engine off first before I open that case. Of course, I said the deck is coming off too, so I took out that cotter pin and this cotter pin here. There's two more. No, there's one more on the other side, and there's two up front. Alright, everything is clear and free now. Okay. Look at all that crap. Alright, well, we got a guy outside with a leaf blower, so bear with me. Yeah, I'm going to have to spray this a few times and then get a brush and brush all that off, because it's pretty caked on there. Alright, well, blower guy's at it again. It came pretty clean. There's still some super baked on stuff there. I'm gonna wheel it back up on the trailer so it'll all dry off. Unfortunately, I misplaced my wire strippers, so I have to get a little creative. That ain't going nowhere. Now I need to tighten this up. I never did yesterday. I just left it loose. All that grease and oil is so baked on there, it's just hard to get off. It would take a lot of scrubbing. Mostly clean. I'm going to go ahead and get this off. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'm gonna get a scraper and get all this gasket off. Well, I couldn't find my small razor blade, so I just have this box cutter here, and I'm very carefully going around the whole thing. Then I'll follow it up with my Scotch-Brite pad here, and then I'll spray the whole thing out with Carb Clean. Got my rag covering here. I'm trying to keep as much of this out of the crankcase as possible. We'll get there. Some of it fell down. It's kind of a tough part here to scrape off. So I lined up the timing marks here so I can pop out this camshaft and clean this out pretty well. Alright, so I got it all cleaned up. Got the bead of RTV on it, finger tight. It's been on here for about an hour. I'm going to go ahead and torque all these down. Alright, well I guess it's time to get this engine back on. These wires were kind of routed weird. Yes, I know I'm missing one mounting bolt. I'll have to go get a new one tomorrow. It only had 3 when I took it out. Got the engine pulley back up there. Just gonna throw this bolt back in, and we will be good down here. Well, I found a pretty good bend right here. And this metal looks like the blade's cut it a couple times and bends it all back. Small one right there. So I'm gonna try to bend this back into shape, grind it clean, put a couple welds on it, and then I think I'm gonna... Okay, so right here is where I realized the point of no return. The area around the spindle had already been cut and re-welded in the past. The blades were about an inch different in cutting height, so it was just never going to be right. I would have had to find a new deck for it. It needed a new deck belt. It probably needed new spindles because when I took those out, the bolts were going to break into them. They were so rusted. It needed new blades. Figured I'd cut my loss at 140 instead of putting more money into it and losing even bigger. Like Kenny said, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away. Here's a sneak peek of the next project. The PTO clutch is seized to the engine, so I have to find a way to take that off and get it working. And then there's a leak in the crankcase gasket, leaking pretty bad, so I have to pull the engine off, reseal it. Keep an eye out for this video. It's going to be a good one. And if you don't know what the AWS stands for, it stands for all-wheel steer.